3 years into the largest European conflict since World War II, the war in Ukraine has become a brutal test of endurance. The war where the truth is buried beneath mountains of propaganda from both sides. Ukraine claims to have decimated Russian forces 7-1. Russia boasts of annihilating entire NATO-equipped brigade. But beyond the fog of war, what does the actual battlefield reality shows? Who holds the strategic advantage in this grueling war of attrition? But to understand who is truly gaining ground, we must analyze three critical dimensions. The first thing is tactical adaptation and gains. The second thing is the ability to replenish losses, which is just the fancy words for how many warm bodies you can get. And the final factors is the industrial and logistical capacity to sustain this conflict. Because in war, victory doesn't go to the side with the most heroic war stories. It goes to the side that can fight when their enemy doesn't. Russia's initial rush towards Kiev in February 2022 failed spectacularly due to poor logistics and Ukrainian stiff resistance. Then come the surprise Kharkiv offensive in September 2022 and the simultaneous Kherson campaign. Despite previous successes, Ukraine's 2023 counteroffensive was proven to be disastrous. Despite NATO training and equipment, entrenched Russian defense, layered minefields, ATGM crews, Ka-52 helicopter ambushes proved insurmountable. The offensive gained 18 kilometers, but at a very high cost. But still, it's not me saying it. It's the peoples on the ground that are talking about the reality of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. For example, this is an interview with Polish volunteers in the armed forces of Ukraine. He explained how is the reality on the front when fighting against well-prepared Russian defenders.
Też stosowali mięsne szturmy, nie tylko Rosjanie. I tam Ukraina poniosła bardzo duże straty, dlatego że na siłę chciała pokazać Zachodowi, że jak dostaje broń od Zachodu, to to osiąga efekty, ma sukcesy, więc potrzebuje więcej tej broni. No, w tym przypadku okazuje się, że jeżeli dostajesz sprzęt natowski, to nie oznacza, że będziesz walczył jak NATO, co nie?
But since then, progress has been slow for both sides. A village there, a tree line there, is not counted with regions anymore, but with mere meters, and sometimes losses are painful for both sides. Attacks or defenses are now more localized. We do not see massive armored attack like at the start of the war anymore, but instead we see small team of riflemen being inserted behind the enemy line. Are won not just by the amount of ground taken, but by the ability to replace losses. And here, the numbers tell a grim story. Ukraine has mobilized over 1 million men since the start of martial law in 2022. But why? Well, the short answer is that losses are catastrophic. The Ukrainian army started the war with nearly 900,000 combat-capable personnel, outnumbering the initial Russian invasion forces. Yet, they have had to draft more and more soldiers to the front, hundreds of thousands or even 1 million soldiers as of right now. And the reason is very simple. They're losing men much faster than the rate that they can replace them. Exact losses ratios are shrouded in secrecy, but I think you can draw your own conclusion by looking at this graph. As you can see, Russia received 3,000 bodies of its own soldiers, but the Ukrainian received more than 8,000. And there's also another problem, desertion. And here are the numbers of desertions in the Ukrainian armed forces. Remember that these are all just a recorded case. There are multiple cases that are not recorded and is not open to the public because of how many of such cases there are. Well, I mean, just look at this video already. As you can see there, recruitment officers from the Ukrainian armed forces are chasing a man because he was trying to avoid being dragged into buses and sent to the front. And one more strange thing is that most deserters are not even people who were stuffed into buses and forced to go on the front. Most of them are just people who voluntarily joined the army in the 2022 or 2023. Most of them are volunteer to effective fighting force, but it's just that they're tired. They're very tired of the war. They get no replacement, they get no rotation out of the battle, and they sit there acting as cannon fodder so that Ukraine can trade more land for time.
Смотри, большинство уклонистов – это не люди, которые запихали в бусики, правильно? Это люди, которые добровольно явились по повестке.
And from history, we all know that the army with the most desertion rate is the army that is losing in a war. So this is no big surprise for us. As we know, well, obviously, Ukraine is losing the war. Russia, meanwhile, has taken a different approach. After the backlash of a forced mobilization in 2022, the Kremlin shifted to a volunteer-based system. They offer huge financial incentive, up to $2,000 a month, 10 times more than what a minimum wage workers earn in a month, bonuses for families, and even free education for children. The result of this is a steady stream of recruits, motivated by money rather than cohesion, but still, they are more motivated than the normal Ukrainian infantrymen. But this doesn't mean that Russia isn't suffering from attrition. Independent sources like Mediazona estimated at least 110,000 Russian soldiers killed, but including the ones that are not listed on social media, we could speculate the number to be 117,000, including an additional 400,000 from wounded or just sick. Larger population and recruitment system allow it to absorb these losses in a way Ukraine cannot. The brutal reality is that Ukraine is running out of experienced soldiers, while Russia is also suffering heavily, but they can replace those losses, and that is the deciding factors in attrition warfare. Wars are fought with bullets, but they're won by industry, and here, Russia holds a major advantage. For example, Russian tanks production have tripled, from just around 50 to 250 tanks produced monthly. There are also refurbished T-80s and T-72, but most of them are brand new T-90Ms that are waiting for new spare parts and waiting to be transported to the front. The artillery gap is also staggering. Russia fires 10,000 shells daily, Ukraine just 2,000 on good days, and even the United 24 media has to admit that they are losing in the artillery war. Aid has provided precision weapons like HIMARS and Storm Shadow. Russia overwhelms with sheer volume, firing 5 shells for every single Ukrainian round. Even donated equipment face nightmares in logistics and maintenance. Each of these vehicles, if destroyed, deals a devastating blows to Ukrainians' ability to defend and offense. Matter of fact, Ukraine doesn't have those kind of spare parts for any damaged or destroyed vehicles. Mechanics then resort to cannibalize damaged vehicles. For every tank lost, 2 more are sidelined awaiting repair. Ukraine is also highly dependent of its partner. As you can see here, the defense minister of Umerov of the Ukrainian Armed Forces admit that Ukraine is 80% dependent on its partner, which further meant that Ukraine cannot produce things locally, or at least for now, and in the future, if the aid stops, then Ukraine is almost well done. So, who's winning? The uncomfortable truth is that Russia is slowly gaining the upper hand. Slowly, painfully, but undeniably. Hold the initiative. They're making incremental gains. Their industry is outproducing Ukraine's, and while the losses are present, is sustainable, more than that of Ukraine. Ukraine, meanwhile, is in a precarious position. Bravery alone cannot hold back artillery and ballistic missile. Western aid is faltering, and without a major shift, either in strategy or in NATO's commitment, the future looks bleak. This war will not end with a grand offensive or dramatic surrender. It will end when one side collapses and the other side has the capacity to keep on fighting. And right now, all signs point to the fact that Ukraine is being pushed to becoming the losing side.